Alcohol it's a hell of a drug, man. If we had to make a bad drug legal, the worst choice was alcohol.
I think most people don't realize that being drunk is actually a poison-induced disruption in the way that your neural circuits work. Acetaldehyde is poison. It will kill cells.
You want to figure out something that you're doing with your life that's worth not getting drunk and screwing up.
When you drink alcohol, it can pass into all the cells and tissues of your body. It has no trouble just passing right into those cells. So unlike a lot of substances and drugs that actually attach to the surface of cells, to receptors as they're called, little parking spots, and then trigger a bunch of downstreams like domino cascades of effects, alcohol actually has its own direct effects on cells because it can really just pass into those cells. So it's water and fat soluble. And the fact that it can pass into so many organs and cells so easily is really what explains its damaging effects. Ethanol produces substantial damage to cells. And it does that because when you ingest ethanol, it has to be converted into something else because it is toxic to the body. It's broken down into acetaldehyde. And if you thought ethanol was bad, acetaldehyde is particularly bad. Acetaldehyde is poison. It will kill cells. It damages and kills cells, and it is indiscriminate as to which cells it damages and kills. The key thing to understand here is that when you ingest alcohol, you are, yes, ingesting a poison, and that poison is converted into an even worse poison in your body. It is the poison, the acetaldehyde itself, that leads to the effect of being inebriated or drunk. I think most people don't realize that being drunk is actually a poison-induced disruption in the way that your neural circuits work. In thinking about the biochemical effects of alcohol and what it's doing to the body, what it's doing in all cases is it's consumed into the gut, right? Goes into the stomach. The liver immediately starts this conversion that we talked about before of ethanol to acetaldehyde to acetate. And some amount of acetaldehyde and acetate are making it into the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. Again, the brain has this fence around it that we call the blood-brain barrier, or the BBB. Many things, most things, thankfully, can't pass across the blood-brain barrier, but alcohol, because it's water and fat soluble, just cruises right across this fence and into the milieu, the environment of the brain.
Stop drinking too much. How do you know if you're drinking too much? You regret what you do when you're drinking. It's interfering with other important goals. It's causing you financial distress. It's getting you in trouble with your friends or your family. It's getting you in trouble with the police. Okay, so stop abusing substances if you can, right? If you see that they're hurting you. And alcohol is particularly pernicious in that regard. So, physical health. Are you in decent shape? Are you strong and coordinated? And if you're not, well, you'd be better if you were. Right. You'd feel better, you'd be more effective, you'd live longer, you'd be less sick. And you really see that mount up. Like if someone's been in shape once in their life, they age way better. And it's also a really good way of maintaining your cognitive ability. Like, you know, you hear about those exercises that you can do online to make you smarter and keep your cognitive ability intact. Yep. Those don't work. There's no evidence that they work. People keep saying that they make you smarter, they maintain your cognitive function. Psychologists have studied that for 50 years, hoping that one of those things will work. Trying all sorts of creative tacks, they don't work. Exercise works. Cardiovascular and weightlifting, you start to decline in your fluid intelligence at about the age of 25. And it's a linear trend downhill, and it can accelerate as you get older. It's just like this, quite ugly. If you exercise, you stave that off. So that's really useful. Maintain your relationships and foster them. So when I look at successful people, they're really good at something. They're reliable, right? You can count on their word. They're generous, and they have a wide connection network, which becomes more and more valuable as you get older. Yeah. So it's one advantage that older people really have over younger people. They have a connection network, and a connection network is
huge.
Well, you could be connected to 1,000 well-connected people. Okay, that means you are connected to the entire world. Right. It's unbelievably valuable. And the funny thing is, if you're trying to stop drinking, you need something better than alcohol. And alcohol is pretty good.
Yeah.
So you better find something a lot better, man. Yeah. And it is. And then esteemable people do esteemable things. It's like, yeah, well, you want to figure out something that you're doing with your life that's worth not getting drunk and screwing up.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's fun. You know, you might say, well, why do people drink too much? It's like, if you like alcohol, that's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, why do people drink too much? Well, because it's great.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so why stop? Well, you do stupid things when you're drunk. You hurt yourself. You compromise your health. It's really hard on the people around you. You tend to turn into a liar, and it screws up your life.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but it's pretty fun. Yeah, well, it is. But you need something better than that. And what's better isn't being straight and not making mistakes. It's like, that's all prohibition in some sense. What's better is, no, you need an adventure, man. You need to get out there and have something to do.
Yeah.
And something worth waking up for. And that's the substitute for the addiction. Actually, the addiction is the substitute for that, if truth be known. So maybe you need to, you know, take an adventurous trip now and then. You got to have something there that's edgy to replace that. Alcohol really is a good drug for coping with anxiety. That's why people use it. So it does two. If you really like alcohol, it does two things to you. It makes you more extroverted and enthusiastic while you're on the ascending limb of the blood alcohol curve, which is why you have to keep drinking once you start. Because if you plateau, that goes away. So you got to keep drinking. Okay, so that's one thing. It makes you more enthusiastic and more full of positive emotion. And the second thing it does is reduce anxiety. Yeah. And so if you are a bit more socially anxious, and you also have that positive response to alcohol, which everyone doesn't have, by the way, then it's a great drug. But the problem is, it's a great drug for the moment.
Right.
Right. There's consequences.
Yeah, this sounds when it's not great.
Well, it also, alcohol is an interesting drug because it actually doesn't make people stupid. This has been tested. Like, people who are drunk will take far more risk. And you might say, well, that's because they're too stupid to understand the risk. It's like, no, they're not. If you ask them about the risk when they're drunk, they can outline it perfectly. What it stops them from doing is caring about the risk. It's actually, and that's part of the anti-anxiety component. It's like, yeah, the risk is, that's why you can drive around drunk at high speed in a car, which is a really stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
We used to do that in the back roads of northern Alberta. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, but people died all the time doing it, especially in the winter. It's like, wow, this is great. It's great until your head's gone through the windshield, you know, like so many things.
Yeah.
You know, it's like jumping off a cliff. I'm flying, which is true until the last 1/10 of a second. It's like, then you're not flying, man. It's like, yeah. So alcohol has exactly that effect. It is a great anti-anxiety drug, but it does stop you, and he said it stopped you from learning the skills that you need in a social circumstance to be able to cope with that. So then it actually stops you from dealing with the anxiety. You don't have to learn how to overcome it. That's not good. Alcohol it's a hell of a drug, man. If we had to make a bad drug legal, the worst choice was alcohol. Yeah, because alcohol is kind of an escape into, well, it's not full unconsciousness, although it certainly can be. Yeah. But yeah, and alcohol also makes people aggressive. It's the only drug we know that actually makes people aggressive. So you see a massive effect on crime rates because half the people who murder someone are drunk.
Oh yeah.
And half the people who are murdered are drunk. If you're starting to put your life together and you have friends that object, those are not friends. Those are just people you know. They're not friends because a friend is someone, this is one of the hallmarks of a friend. Here's two hallmarks. A friend is someone you can tell bad news to. And they won't tell you why you're an idiot and they won't interfere with your suffering. They'll just listen and maybe they'll suffer along with you. Okay, so you can tell bad news to them and they won't tell you some worse thing that happened to them. They'll listen and they'll suffer along with you. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to. And the friend will say, wow, in this vale of tears, something good happened to you. Great, man.
Congrats.
I'm wonderful. It's rare. It's unlikely. Good for you. I hope 10 more things like that happen. And they're not envious and they're not jealous and they're not one-upping you. And if you're trying to get your life together, if you're trying to get your life together and your friends get in the way, that's actually real useful for you because you've now identified who your friends aren't. And you might think, well, I can't give them up. It's like, oh, yes, you can. And not only can you should, and it would be better for them. Because if they're aiming down and they want you going down with them, There's nothing good about what's happening to them, and there's certainly nothing good about that for you.